Mom insisted, "We never called you names," then watched me list them off like reading from a shopping receipt. I didn't even raise my voice. I just pulled my phone out, unlocked it with my thumb, and scrolled to the note I'd made in therapy. My hands were shaking a little, which annoyed me because I wanted to look calm. "Okay," I said, more to myself than to her. "Let's see. Overdramatic. Lazy. Ungrateful. Too sensitive. Drama queen. Built for comfort, not for speed." That one's from you, actually. Crazy, selfish attention seeker. No man will ever put up with you. And my personal favorite. "You're lucky we didn't trade you in." I looked up from the screen. "Do you want me to keep going, or?" It was a Wednesday night at her kitchen table. Same table I'd done homework on. Same chair she used to tell me to sit in when I was in trouble. There was a ring of coffee on the oak, a little crescent-shaped stain that had been there at least 10 years. Mom's mug was right next to it, untouched, steam long gone. She had both hands wrapped around it like it might try to escape. Her jaw clenched in that way that makes the muscle in her cheek jump. "That's not calling you names," she said tightly. "Those are descriptions. We were parenting. We were being honest with you." I stared at her. "Mom, if I said to your face, 'You're lazy and crazy and no one will ever love you,' would you feel parented?" She flinched so fast it was almost imperceptible and then covered it with a scoff. "You always twist everything," she said. "You're making us sound like monsters. We never called you names." She really stressed the never, like if she said it hard enough it would rewrite the last 26 years of my life. It was actually my therapist's idea to start writing them down. I'm 26F now. I started therapy at 24 after what I thought was a random panic attack in the frozen food aisle. One second I was trying to decide between two brands of frozen dumplings. The next I was on the floor, lungs clamped shut, convinced I was dying. The paramedics told me my heart was fine. "Probably anxiety," one of them said, like he was commenting on the weather. He asked if I had stress at home. I laughed so hard I could barely get the words out. "Doesn't everyone? Turns out not like that." My therapist, Jess, is one of those people who looks soft until she asks a question that slices you open. In our third session, after listening to me describe my family in this weird, curated, sitcom way, she tilted her head and asked, "What did your parents call you when you were a kid?" I shrugged. "My name." She didn't smile. "What else did they call you?" I tried to brush it off. "I mean, normal stuff. Drama queen, crybaby, lazy sometimes. Dad used to joke that I was the accident, but he didn't mean it. He called my brother a little man all the time. It was just, jokes." She wrote something down. "What happens in your body when you say those words out loud?" I thought she was being dramatic. Then I noticed my shoulders were touching my ears and my hands were clenched in fists on my knees. Jess gave me homework. For the next week, every time you hear your parents' voices in your head, I want you to write down exactly what they're saying. The exact phrases if you can. Don't judge, don't make excuses. Just list them. We'll look at it together. I did it because I'm a nerd and I do homework even when it's for my own mental health. I opened a new note in my phone and titled it, stupidly, Messages. At first it was a trickle. "You're so dramatic. Nobody else cries like you do. You're exhausting." Then my brain really started cooperating. I'd be washing dishes and suddenly hear my mom's voice in my head. "Why are you sitting like that? No man will ever want someone who slouches around like a sack of potatoes." I'd be lying in bed and hear my dad. "You were an accident, but we kept you, didn't we? You should be grateful." The list grew. "Built for comfort, not for speed." Said when I was 13 and wearing a swimsuit. "You'd lose your head if it wasn't screwed on. If you weren't so lazy, you'd be pretty. You're the reason your brother acts out. We should have stopped at one. Sometimes I wonder what we did to deserve you." Seeing it all lined up on a screen did something to my brain. When it was in my head, it was just noise. White noise. The soundtrack to my life. On the screen, in black and white, it looked like evidence. At our next session, Jess handed me a box of tissues before I even took my phone out. I laughed. You always do that. Because every time you say you're fine, you start crying within 3 minutes, she said calmly. What did you find? I passed her my phone. She read quietly, her brow furrowing deeper with each line. Then she looked up. You called these messages? Yeah, I said, defensive without knowing why. These are names, she said. Or, more precisely, character assassinations. I shrugged. They were just joking. Did it feel like a joke? She asked. I felt my throat close. Sometimes, I lied. She waited. One of the most infuriating things about her is how she can just sit there silently until I fill the space. Okay, no, I admitted. Most of the time it felt like they were disappointed, or like they'd found a flaw and were holding it up to the light. How old were you when they started? I thought back as far as I could. I don't know. 7? 8? She nodded. So for nearly 2 decades, the people raising you gave you a running commentary about how dramatic, lazy, ungrateful, crazy, etc. you were. Over and over in formative years. That's not neutral. That shapes your sense of self. I mean, they weren't abusive, I said quickly. They didn't hit us or anything. We always had food. They came to my choir concerts and stuff. Jess held up a hand. Abuse is not a binary where on one side you're in a basement with no food and on the other everything is fine, she said. What I'm hearing is emotional abuse and verbal abuse. Many people struggle to call it that, especially when there's also love and some good memories. Both can be true. I cried. Predictably. Later in the session, after I'd calmed down, she said, You mentioned last week that when you try to bring up your feelings to your mom now, she tells you, We never called you names, you're making us out to be monsters. Would you ever consider showing her this list? My stomach dropped. God, no, I said immediately. She'd explode. Or cry. Or both. So right now, all of this lives only between your ears and me, Jess said. Which is a start. You don't have to confront her. Ever. But my hunch is that part of you keeps hoping she'll validate your experience. I also hear you say you feel gaslit a lot, that she denies things that happened. Sometimes writing it down, in your words, helps anchor you when someone tries to rewrite history. That word, gaslighting, had been circling the edges of my brain for months. I'd seen the memes, the TikToks, the posts on here. I kept thinking, my family's not that bad. In the same breath as, maybe I am as awful as they say. Therapy didn't magically fix everything, shockingly. But it did give me language. It gave me a way to say, when you call me lazy, it hurts. Instead of just silently absorbing it and then binge cleaning my apartment to prove I wasn't. Things with my family actually got worse before they got sideways. Every time I tried to set a boundary, please don't comment on my weight. I'm not available to babysit on 2 hours' notice. If you shout, I'm going to hang up. They reacted like I joined a cult. Oh, so therapy says we're bad parents now? My dad would snarl. Who have you been talking to about us? Mom would ask, voice trembling. You're making us sound like villains. At a family dinner last year, when my cousin mentioned going to counseling, my mom gave me a pointed look and said, Kids these days are soft. My generation didn't need a feelings doctor every time life got hard. I looked her straight in the eye and said, Your generation also calls their kids names and then pretends it didn't happen. The table went quiet. A week after that, she called and said we needed to talk face to face, like adults, because she was tired of being attacked, which is how we ended up at the kitchen table. Coffee mugs and ghosts between us, her insisting, We never called you names. Like my nervous system hadn't been built around dodging verbal landmines. When I started reading from my list that night, I wasn't planning some big gotcha moment. It was more self-preservation than vengeance. I knew, from repetition, that if I tried to paraphrase, she'd say, We never said it like that, or You're exaggerating. I wanted my own receipts, literally. She listened to the first few with a tight, fixed smile. By no man will ever put up with you. The color had drained from her face. That was a joke, she snapped. You were stomping around like a teenager, slamming doors. We were trying to get you to think about your actions. I was 12, I said. My voice cracked on it and I hated that. I hadn't even kissed anyone yet. And you were telling me I was fundamentally unlovable unless I changed. She waved a hand. You're twisting it all. You know we love you. We gave you everything. There it was. The ledger. Every conversation with my parents eventually comes back to some kind of invoice. Food, roof, school, gifts, rides. As if the bare minimum of parenting cancels out being told. We should have stopped at one. I know you did a lot for me, I said carefully. I'm grateful for the ways you showed up. I can also be hurt by the ways you tore me down. Both can be true. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. That's such therapist talk. Both can be true. You think you're so enlightened now. I took a breath. Jess had drilled this into me. When you feel defensive, slow down. Answer the question behind the question. I don't think I'm enlightened, I said. I think I'm exhausted from carrying around all this crap and calling it normal. Her lip wobbled. For a second, I saw something like guilt flash across her face. It gave me that stupid, dangerous hope that maybe, finally, she would say, "You're right. We did say those things. I'm sorry." Instead, she reached for her mug, took a tiny sip of cold coffee and said, "Well, if we did say any of that, you provoked it." I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just burst out of me, this bitter little bark of disbelief. I provoked being called an accident? You were always so difficult, she said, ramping up now, like she'd found safer ground in blaming me. You fought us on everything. You were moody, you slammed doors, you embarrassed us in public with your outbursts. And now you're digging up every little thing we ever said in frustration and acting like we were, what was that word you used? Abusive. She spat it out like it tasted bad. I felt my hands start to tingle, that pre-panic attack buzz. I pressed my palms flat against my thighs under the table. I didn't say you were abusive, I said quietly. I said some of your behavior was abusive. There's a difference. She leaned forward. You're making us out to be monsters, she said again. It sounded almost rehearsed at this point. I'm making you out to be human, I said. Humans who did some really hurtful things and don't want to look at them. Her eyes narrowed. You sound just like that therapist, she said. Has she told you to cut us off? Is that what this is? Is that why you're here? To tell me you're never speaking to me again? Her voice broke on the last part, and for a second I saw my mom. Not the mom. The woman who made my Halloween costumes, who sat with me when I had ear infections, who danced with me in the kitchen to ABBA when Dad was out. That's what makes this so hard. By the way, people on the internet are quick to say, just go no contact. They're not wrong that it's an option, but they don't see your mom crying over your kindergarten drawing, or your dad teaching you to ride a bike. They don't see the small, real moments mixed in with the gaslighting and the names. It's messy. It's never all bad or all good. I'm here because you keep telling me things didn't happen that did, I said. And I need you to at least know that I remember, that my experience is valid even if it makes you uncomfortable. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. Then the tears came. Big, performative ones, the kind designed to make me recant. After everything we've done for you, she whispered, all the sacrifices, this is how you repay us? By calling me a bad mother. Oh, there it was, the nuclear button. I didn't say you're a bad mother, I said, choosing each word carefully. I said you hurt me, intentionally sometimes, and you're still hurting me now by denying it. Dad walked in then because the universe loves comedic timing. What's going on? He asked, seeing Mom crying. His eyes flicked to me, already on the attack. What did you say to your mother? I was so tired in my bones. She's telling me we never called her names, Mom said, voice wobbling. She's accusing us of all sorts of terrible things, saying we're abusive. Dad's face darkened. Oh, for God's sake, he said, fixing me with a glare. Is this more of that therapist nonsense? You always were the dramatic one, Lily. You can't just rewrite history because your feelings got hurt. Something in me hardened. Very quietly, like a door clicking shut. You're not rewriting history, I said. You're trying to. I pulled my phone back up. Do you want to hear your greatest hits too? You're lucky we didn't trade you in. You're the reason your mom is so stressed. No man will ever put up with you. We should have stopped at one. Ringing any bells. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The vein in his forehead was doing its thing. You're being ridiculous, he said eventually. Everyone says things in anger. You're the only one who harps on it for years. Everyone says things, I echoed. Not everyone says them repeatedly to a child and then denies it ever happened. Dad threw up his hands. You can't talk to her when she's like this, he told Mom. She's made up her mind. Whatever we say will just be more ammunition. Jess had predicted this too. That at some point they'd accuse me of using anything they said as ammo. That's what happens when you've gotten used to never being held accountable. Any reflection looks like an attack. I stood up. My legs felt weirdly numb, like they belonged to someone else. I'm not here to fight, I said. I actually hoped, stupidly, that maybe we could have an honest conversation. That you'd say, yeah, we did say those things sometimes. We were wrong. We're sorry. I looked between them. Neither of them could hold my gaze. But if you can't do that, I at least need you to stop telling me I made it up. Mom wiped her cheeks dramatically. So what, you're cutting us off? I thought of Jess's face, calm and steady, saying, you get to decide what level of contact is safe for you. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, but you also don't have to keep walking into situations that re-traumatize you. I'm not cutting you off, I said. I'm stepping back. I'm not going to come over alone to have my reality argued with. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be one where I'm not being called names and then called crazy for noticing. Dad scoffed. There she goes. Ultimatums. It's not an ultimatum, I said. It's a boundary. He rolled his eyes. Boundaries, therapy, gaslighting, abuse. You learn a couple of buzzwords and suddenly you think you're an expert. I'm an expert on my own pain, I said. My voice was low now, tired. That's it. That's all I'm claiming. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. My keys clinked against each other in my hand. Mom made this small, strangled sound, like she wanted to say something and couldn't quite form it. Are you really walking out? She whispered. I'm not storming out, I said. I'm walking out, calmly, because staying here and being told my memories are wrong is not good for me. If you ever want to talk and are actually willing to listen instead of denying, you can call me. Until then, I need some space. I walked to the door. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. My mouth tasted like pennies. I half expected one of them to follow me, to grab my arm, to shout. No one did. In the car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel and just breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth, like Jess had taught me. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom before I even pulled away. I don't know who you are anymore. Therapy has turned you against us. We never called you names. I looked at the words, at the never, at the complete lack of, I love you, or, can we try again? Just another denial, another rewrite. I opened my notes app and added one last line to the list. We never called you names, because that, honestly, hurt more than being called lazy ever did. At least the insults acknowledged my existence. The gaslighting erased it. I don't know yet what my relationship with my parents will look like going forward. Right now, it's been 3 weeks since that kitchen table scene. Mom has sent a few more texts, all variations on the same theme. We love you, we never hurt you, how dare you suggest otherwise. Dad sent one that just said, grow up. I haven't replied. My brothers have been mixed. The older one texted, you know they love you, right? They just have a different way of showing it. Which made me want to throw my phone into the ocean. The younger called and said quietly, I remember them saying some of that stuff too. It wasn't okay. I don't know how to talk to them about it, but you're not crazy. I cried after that call, but in a good way. I'm not writing this because I did some perfect boundary conversation and now everything is healed. I didn't. I shook and stuttered and laughed at the wrong moments. I left feeling both righteous and like the worst daughter in the world. I've second-guessed myself 100 times since. I'm writing this because that moment at the table, with my phone in my hand and my mom saying, "We never called you names," felt like a fork in the road. For 26 years, I've taken the path where I doubt myself, assume they're right, and try harder to be whatever version of me would finally earn good kid instead of problem. This time, I read my own receipts instead. Mom insisted, "We never called you names," like saying it could unsay all the things she'd ever thrown at me. For once, I didn't swallow it. I didn't twist myself into believing I'd imagined it. I listed them, calmly, like items on a shopping receipt. It hurt like hell. It also felt, in a small, shaky way, like the beginning of something that might eventually, if I keep choosing it, feel like freedom. Mom pulled back, frowning like I'd spoken in code she didn't understand. "You'll come next year?" she asked. "I'll see how things are," I said, which was both honest and non-committal enough to soothe her. On the drive home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. I replayed every line, every flinch, every eye roll. The shame came in waves. "You made a scene. You made it about you. You're confirming everything they think." Then the other voice, quieter but steadier. "You didn't start it. You told the truth. You left when you needed to. You weren't alone." My phone buzzed at a red light. A new group chat. Chaos Kids Collision. Members: Jess, Adam, Becca, Max, and me. Jess: "Proud of you today." Adam: "Seconded." Becca: "Thirded. Maybe fourthed?" Max: "Sorry if I made it weird. I just got mad." Me: "You didn't make it weird. Thank you. All of you." Jess replied with a voice note. "For the record," she said, "when Aunt Carol said problem child and we all moved toward you, that wasn't planned. It just happened. I think we were all done letting you sit there by yourself." I turned the volume down and let myself cry a little at the next red light. Not the panicked, humiliated crying I was used to after family events. A weird, achy, almost relieved kind of crying. I'm not about to pretend everything is fixed now. Carol will probably tell anyone who will listen that I ruined Christmas with my therapy talk. Dad will probably double down on his jokes to prove he's not intimidated by his own kid. Mom will keep trying to smooth it over instead of looking at her part in it. But something shifted this year that I didn't expect. The cousins I thought were just bystanders quietly chose a side, and it wasn't hers. At Christmas brunch, Aunt joked, "Here comes the problem child," expecting everyone to laugh like they always have. Instead, chairs scraped, bodies moved, and my so-called problems pulled people in rather than pushing them away. Maybe I am the problem in the sense that I am a problem for the way things have always been. And maybe, finally, that's not a bad thing.